I was kind of a wayward kid, certainly, a little bit lost in my 20s, and I was looking for a direction, certainly, and I think culinary provided that for me. As soon as I got to culinary school, I really, people said that my eyes lit up and my attitude changed, and I seemed really excited and engaged for the first time in something, and it's given me a wonderful 20-year run, and I love it to this day.
Welcome back, Rockstars. I'm really inspired by this week's guest. Chef D is a seasoned operator in Los Angeles who's had multiple concepts. He's gone through all the pivots and changes and pandemic challenges that you've all had. But what's really inspiring is he's finding solutions to the labor shortage by utilizing labor that you wouldn't typically think for your restaurant. Rehabilitated, incarcerated individuals, homeless people. And Chef D's main philosophy is up-leveling the industry by not just creating jobs, but creating career opportunities. So I'm really pleased to introduce Chef D. Brandon Walker is his real name, but we're going to call him Chef D, as he likes to be called. But listen to this episode. He has a new concept that he's launching called the Art Room, which I found really interesting in that it blends an art gallery with a food concept. It's upscale, it's beautiful, it's elegant, and it elevates our industry, in addition to how he chooses to staff his restaurants and the benefits and the fulfillment and gratification that come from giving people a second chance. Stay tuned.
You're tuned in to the Restaurant Rockstars Podcast. Powerful ideas to rock your restaurant. Here's your host, Roger Bodwin.
Restaurant owners and managers, I call this the business of 1,000 details, and you've got more important things to worry about than calculating and paying your monthly sales tax on time. Well, that's where Davo comes in. Davo puts sales tax on autopilot for restaurants. Davo uses sales tax data from your point-of-sale system to set aside the exact amount of sales tax you collect every single day and then files it and pays it when it's due, on time for your restaurant every month. Davo takes just 5 minutes to set up, and once it's up and running, you never have to worry about paying sales tax again. Davo costs $49.99 per POS connection per month, and your restaurant can try Davo for the first 30 days free. Davo was created by a successful restaurant chef and owner who knows what's important for your operation. Time is money, and you've got more important things to focus on, like pleasing your guests. You can't put a price on peace of mind. Why not try Davo for the first 30 days at davosalestax.com.
Welcome back, everyone. This is the Restaurant Rockstars Podcast, and I meet so many interesting people on this show. And I'm with Chef D today, and he is elevating the culinary world with a really unique business model. We're going to get into all of that. Begin with my guest backstory. So welcome to the show, Chef D. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. Excited to talk.
I'm excited to have you here. Again, this is such an interesting concept, and you have such an interesting approach to the business. But let's, again, start with your backstory, and you can take us back, wherever you'd like to go. But I'm really interested in your inspirations, when it all began for you, obviously, your culinary passions, your influences, all of that is what we want to hear.
Well, I've been a chef for 20 years. I went to culinary school in 2002. I went to Trade Technical College here in Los Angeles, which is the city's oldest culinary school. And I think that as soon as I got there, I realized that this was for me. I was one of those people that when I got into the kitchen, it was something that really appealed to me. The order, the structure, the hierarchy, working as a team, only being as strong as your weakest link. That really appealed to me as a young man. I can say that I did not come from a food-centric family. I think that my mom was a pretty good cook. And I enjoyed her food, but we had a very small family, and so we didn't have a lot of big family gatherings, and I never really fully understood the importance and the significance of food, in socialization and culture and whatnot. And so I think I got exposed to that later as a teenager, just kind of being introduced to some of my friends' families and seeing the important role that food played. And I think that's when I started to become interested in food for the first time. And I was kind of a wayward kid, certainly, a little bit lost in my 20s, and I was looking for a direction, certainly, and I think culinary provided that for me. Again, as soon as I got to culinary school, I really, people said that my eyes lit up and my attitude changed, and I seemed really excited and engaged for the first time in something. And it's given me a wonderful 20-year run, and I love it to this day.
So the light bulb went off and you said, this is it. You knew instantly this is where you belong, and you obviously have a passion for it. Was there a certain type of cuisine that you sort of really were into cooking back then? Did that evolve when you go to culinary school? You're exposed obviously to multiple cuisines, fusions and different cultures and different countries and all that sort of stuff. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, I do. And I think that the food scene in LA is a very specific one. I think that it has a very specific palate, like you would find in a lot of other major cities. We have a very specific mix here. We have a very strong Korean, Armenian, Oaxacan. It's a very specific mix here in Los Angeles, and those were certainly the foods that I gravitated towards. So I would definitely include Asian cuisine, all things Mexican cuisine, and a lot of influences Mediterranean and Eastern Europe, Middle Eastern. LA is such a great food town. We have such distinct neighborhoods and such strong culture here. And I think that we kind of got put under this umbrella of California cuisine for a long time. I think that, the rest of the nation kind of saw us as that. But we have some very, very strong and very specific cultural mixes here.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I lived in Los Angeles for 3 years, and we used to go to Olvera Street for Mexican. We'd go to Chinatown for Chinese, and it would be like you'd immerse yourself in a different culture. You'd take yourself to a different place, and food is transformative in so many ways. It's the universal language. It's what brings us all together. But it's really interesting to experience different cuisines. That's fantastic. When you're cooking at home, do you like to cook a specific dish for yourself? What's your favorite thing to eat?
I sad to say, I don't do a lot of cooking at home.
When you have the time,
My wife is Okinawan, and so she has some fantastic Okinawan dishes that I love. That I love eating. I just enjoy it when somebody else is doing the cooking. I tend to work, 6-7 days a week, so not home much doing the cooking.
Yeah, I was never a chef, or I don't claim to be a solid cook. I can make a mean risotto and, caramelized scallops at home, one of my favorite dishes. But it's like I never cooked in the kitchen at my restaurant other than, well, I shouldn't say that. We had a wood-fired pizzeria, which was our first concept. And I used to love getting in front of that wood-fired oven and cooking the pies. That was very therapeutic to me. And I would jump in just because I enjoyed doing it. But other than that, it's like I stayed off the line. It's like, I was the finance and marketing guy when I owned restaurants. Let me ask you a question.
Well, if you can pull off a good risotto, then I think you got what it takes.
Yeah, well,
that's very technique heavy.
I've been doing it for so many years. I could do it blindfolded, dash of this, little white wine to, I have a good time with it. Let me ask you, when you're in culinary school, did you learn the whole financial side of the business as well? Is that a focus when you go to a culinary school? Because it's not just about cooking. Because yes, a lot of people are going to go out and they're going to work for other restaurant owners, but ultimately a lot of people like yourself ultimately want to own their own restaurant. And so many chefs, find out sometimes the hard way that, hey, it's so much more than just being an amazing culinarian. It's all about people skills and financial skills and marketing skills and the whole, in addition to running a kitchen and running a dining room and every thousand details, I call it. What would you say? Did you learn those skills in, in culinary school as well, or is that on the job training as well? Where'd that come from?
No, that was on the job.
Yep.
Can't say we got much on the financial side in culinary school.
Okay.
I was fortunate. I had a very unique. I got into it a little bit later, so I was in my late 20s by the time that I started at culinary school. I think it was 28 when I entered, and the cool thing about that is that I also needed to have a job, at the exact same time. So I would go to culinary school from 6 o'clock in the morning till about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and then I had a shift that started at 2, and I would work from 2 to 11 for Jenny Cook. Jenny Cook is this amazing chef here based in Los Angeles, and she had this great place called the Double Dutch. And I saw this sole proprietor, run a restaurant with a very busy lunch and a dinner service. And in addition to that, really the core of her business was her catering. So it was one of those immersive places where you just got thrown in and you got to do everything right away. I mean, literally from, loading your car up with equipment and going on location to, prepping the food for lunch and dinner service. So to see her do her thing and to survive and to thrive, you quickly realize how many, things you have to be good at.
That's a perfect segue, because now with your concept, and we're going to get into obviously Mar Vista in a few moments, but you have a very unique training model and you have a very unique way of attracting staff and building them, developing them, nurturing them. But what really struck me is you involve them in almost every aspect of the business. And I get the sense that they get rotated through all these different jobs. And do they then specialize or focus, or is it just cross training so that anyone can jump into any position? Tell us all about your training model.
Right. So, this was really born out of my own work experience. So I went from Jenny Cook to work for many wonderful chefs in fine dining. And that was that defined the first part of my career, the first 5 years of my career. I got burned out. And I actually took a hiatus from the industry for about a year there. So I was about 5 years in, and I just, I was working 60 hours a week, and I felt that the management style was, left something to be desired. It could be toxic at times.
Okay.
So I found myself being a little disillusioned at that point, and I didn't see the clear path to what you referenced earlier, which was ultimately wanting to own my own business. I felt more on that was being kind of like pushed around, and so after this hiatus, I started working for the St. Joseph Center. And that's really the watershed moment in my career that changed everything, because that was a nonprofit organization that had this wonderful place called the Bread and Roses Cafe, where we did meals each and every day for about 150 folks that were experiencing homelessness.
Beautiful. This is a wonderful story.
We also ran a thing called CTP, or Culinary Training Program. And this was a class that happened 8 times a year. It was 7 weeks in length, each rotation. And it was comprised of 16 students that were coming from all different walks of life that had faced many challenges in their lives. They were underemployed or unemployed. We had folks coming, with PTSD from the military, high functioning autism, a history of drug addiction coming from rehab centers, also from the prison systems as well.
Awesome.
So this really changed everything, and I found my purpose. But not only did I find my purpose and my passion in helping people, as an educator, I also found a philosophy that I would later use to run my restaurants. And this was kind of like a Kaizen kind of that Japanese philosophy of, constant improvement, solving problems as a team, everyone being able to be interchangeable, everyone doing everything, and that fostering a sense of equity, and also what I like to call willingness. When people feel that you've invested in them and that they have the opportunity to grow and to be promoted and to take on more responsibility, they are willing to do that. And I think that's what fosters this great work environment. And I think that's so important to have your staff engaged to run a successful food operation.
No question about it. No question. But it all starts with leadership and yourself and leading at the top. So I get the sense that you lead clearly by example and that you're right in there every single day and you're nurturing and developing and you're empowering people. We've recently started to discover this sort of difference on the podcast because most managers in this industry will delegate. We think that that's a really important thing to do so that, you're not doing everything clearly, but there's a very clear and distinct difference between delegating and empowering because anybody can tell somebody what to do, but it's the rare manager or owner that literally nurtures and develops his people and gives them more responsibility, gives them a chance to fail and trusts in their judgment and then recognizes and rewards those people for their achievement. There's a huge difference between delegation and empowerment. So I'm getting the sense that you are definitely an empowering leader. So I'm really inspired by that. That is tremendous. Let's talk a little bit about, let's talk about inclusivity because again, you welcome all into your restaurant, right? And we're going to talk about, hiring practices and where you're finding your people because this is a labor crisis. So let's keep that on the side for just a second. But it's all about inclusivity and elevating people that are less fortunate, that haven't had advantages, that are now being given a second opportunity or even their first opportunity to grow in a career that can take them anywhere. And that's what inspires me the most. Because I learned a long time ago that in this business, you don't need a formal education. You can start at the very bottom. You can be sweeping the floor or being in the dish pit and you can end up owning a chain of restaurants. And I've interviewed guests that have done that. I've had employees in my own restaurants that have gone on to open their own restaurants. So that is a beautiful thing unto itself, but you're really encouraging and nurturing that particular thing to happen. And that is so rare. So tell me about where you find your people and then what the process is like. How do you onboard people and then expose them to all aspects of your business and then, turn them loose and see what they do? That's really incredible.
So I've always been curious of this intersection between a nonprofit and profit world.
Okay. Yeah.
And a lot of people kind of discouraged me from that thought. A lot of my mentors in the restaurant industry, a lot of chefs that I have a lot of respect for, just thought that might not work, that it might not be practical. And so I kind of, cultivated my ideas on this subject while I was at the St. Joseph Center. I was there for a decade and I graduated over 1,200 students. And so when I was ready to take the next step in my career, when I left to open the Mar Vista, which was a 125-seat fine dining restaurant, we opened our first year. I think we did $4 million in business. It was a huge opening.
Wow, I guess. Awesome. That's a great start.
We were literally booked out for a year straight. Some people said we opened too big. Maybe in retrospect, that's a possibility. But and we could get into that. But so what I did from the very beginning is that I wanted to bring along so many of the people I'd worked with in nonprofit into my first for-profit venture.
Gotcha.
And at one point in that first year, I had 9 on staff from the CTP program. Mm-hmm. That became my model moving forward.
You already had that chemistry, right? Like you knew these people knew you had worked together closely, and it's like you brought them aboard and you set a clear vision for the concept, right? And people jumped in and that was a really beautiful foundation. That's what I'm seeing. Keep going.
And so during that first year of the Mar Vista,
Mhm.
I then opened the Mar Vista Grab and Go, which is my fast casual counter service concept directly across the street. So I was running a 3,000 square foot, 125 seater on one side of the street, and then directly across the street we had a 1,200 square foot
Mhm.
fast casual counter service with about 32 seats and a big back patio. And so, you know, at that point, I needed to hire on more folks, and
Yes.
I continued the model, and I
Yep.
started working with some sober living facilities that were in our neighborhood, and I met some really great guys that were looking for those second and third chances. And like you said, I had guys that were starting in the dish pit. I'm very proud to say that I have a couple guys who started in the dish pit that are still with me now, and this is 6 years into this run, and they are my most senior guys. So
Awesome.
I absolutely have lived that story. That is a reality in my everyday business. And so now we're moving downtown,
Yeah.
and we can get into that, and then that my next concept is the art room, which is kind of it's another big endeavor, and this one is in downtown Los Angeles. So that's kind of like where we're at in the
Well,
story.
it sounds like, yeah,
So
it sounds
it,
like you've tapped into a whole market of talent or talent to be developed. And have you avoided this whole labor crisis that 99% of the other restaurant owners out there are dealing with? I mean, it sounds like,
so I can talk to you in terms of what the pandemic was like for us.
yeah, please do.
I know that you've definitely heard this before. Those first few months of the pandemic
Yep.
in mid 2020 were absolutely frightening, to say the least. I looked at my staff, and I looked at my wife even, and I thought, like, wow, this could. I mean, the numbers were unbelievable. The drop off in business. Fortunately, with the grab and go model, we were already kind of built on the online platforms. Our food didn't suffer from being boxed up and presented, to go. So we easily pivoted. I wouldn't say it's easy, but we were able to pivot during that. And I started to look at my numbers. I started to take a long look at my sales versus labor hours. And I started to listen more intently to my customers and what they really wanted, what they needed during the pandemic, how their schedules had changed and how their eating habits had changed, and how, the times at which they were ordering, maybe they were ordering and then, they were ordering for dinner for the following night, or they were, using the food for school, for lunches because now their kids were home from school, or all these different factors were happening. And we just kind of gave our customers not only what they wanted, but also got smarter and more efficient as a business. And again, kind of that Kaizen,
Yeah.
philosophy, everybody came together and we got really, really efficient and really good at what we did. And so, through this, as far as staffing, I was able to keep all of my existing staff, but also start to prepare, for my expansion, because we were already under construction when COVID hit downtown. So this project it's a large project in downtown Los Angeles, and it's been developing now for 2 years. So it was actually a blessing in disguise. It gave us a chance to pause and to do some really cool, design changes to make our space, more COVID proof, moving forward for the future. But it also made me look even harder at, hiring from a different population, taking folks that had been, disenfranchised. I think that the restaurant industry gave Well, I would say this. I would say that COVID kind of gave everybody a chance to realize that there might have been some shortcomings as far as life and work balance in the industry, and I think that's why we're having a hard time getting those people back. And so I always had this idea of recruiting from a pool of people that previously might not have been first on your list
right.
in previous times. So I don't know. I think there maybe now we see that restaurant owners and folks that have had some struggles and some challenges in their lives are two groups that might need each other more than ever at this point.
Wow. So much comes to mind because we talked about the mass exodus of the industry and so many people have left, but now you're talking about, you have another part of your model that has shorter hours, right? There's 6-hour shifts versus 8-hour shifts. Let's talk about that, because that is so key. I mean, you're not burning your people out in an industry known for burning its people out.
Correct. So this is really important. And I think that it came about, we have some pretty strict labor laws here in California. Just the madness of breaks, like, oh, you got to take your 15 and now you have to take 30 minutes unpaid, and nobody wants to do that. And then, getting into overtime, which just blows your labor costs,
absolutely
out of the water.
Yes.
And then nobody feels good. Nobody feels good after they've worked 10 hours. I don't. And so I just feel like, when you address the inequity in pay between front of house and back of house, which I have instituted a universal tipping, program at my restaurants, where every single person that's on shift shares equally in those tips, whether they touch the table or not. So that includes runners, baristas, bartenders, back of house. And that has, so in LA County, we went to $15 minimum wage. I believe that was in 2018. So we've been in that reality for quite a while, the $15 minimum wage. And now by doing the universal tip model, I've gotten, most of my guys are averaging $20 an hour, which is, I'm proud to say, is an actual living wage here in Los Angeles. So I'm very proud of the $20 an hour thing that we've been averaging. And then by shortening the shifts, I avoid the 30-minute unpaid break, where people are kind of like, I mean, if you talk to your employees, most of them don't want to do it. It's like, well, I'm not getting paid, and now I just have to go sit in my car or go they'd
rather
walk down the block.
Keep working.
Right. They'd rather keep working. The idea, so I shortened my hours from 11 and we were closing at 5. This was pandemic hours. And so I had people on these 6-hour shifts, and I just saw that the productivity went up, and it seemed like the morale went up. It seemed like people were having a better time getting in and out, and they felt more of that work-life balance. And so that's what I hope to continue with the art room, which is the new restaurant in downtown LA that's opening next month, April.
Yeah, I want to talk about that in a minute, but let's stay on this topic about your model, because I'm finding it fascinating and it sounds very, very positive overall. But is there any downside to it? Do you have anyone who isn't feeling that they're getting enough hours? Do you have anyone who is not necessarily happy about the tip share? Because if they worked in another restaurant before, maybe the front of house staff obviously always out-earned the back of house staff, and then suddenly dilute their earnings. I mean, is volume, enough to obviously keep everybody happy? And are they all making really good money and they're all really happy? Or is there any challenges with that?
Well, I think that this comes down to, for me at least, the fine dining versus fast casual.
Yeah, for sure.
And I can say that I'm not going to go back to fine dining. um, I just think that there's something inherent about managing the expectations, not only of your customers, but of your staff with the fine dining model. Because everything is kind of that old brigade system. This is my job. This is your job. You do this. If this is not happening, then I'm standing around doing nothing.
Right. Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of that. And so, I think that the idea that if you can't make, a taco, then I don't want you to work for me. Like it's like, that's kind of like, on its simplest terms, it's like, if you can't, make a cappuccino and make a taco and run something to the table, everybody has to be able to do everything. And honestly, like everyone who works for me will hit the dish pit as well. I do everything compostable now, so I don't have any hard plates or silverware. But we do our own pots and pans, for instance, and that's just like part of the job. And we do QR codes, so people can order from their table, or they can walk into the restaurant and order at the counter. And this allows people. I'm kind of losing my train of thought here. So basically,
talking about QR codes and giving people opportunities to order from the table, which increases efficiency. So you don't need as many people. Yeah,
exactly. Increases efficiency, and we don't need as many people. But also, we have gotten rid of the traditional server role.
Yeah.
So there's no server. Nobody comes up to your table and takes your order.
Sure.
And so I think that was the biggest pushback that I was getting from the traditional front of house waiter type.
Yes. That would be the mindset of the traditional server front of house person, for sure. Definitely. But now we're talking about everybody doing everything. So that levels the playing field, and it means everyone should share in all the tips, which I can see paving the way to making that really work.
Correct.
Yep.
I think the only exception that I'm running at the new place is with the bartenders. The bartenders will be able to keep their tips on their drink sales.
Okay, fair enough.
Because I think that's a leap too far. I don't think we're there yet. Somehow I'll figure that out, how to get around the bartender stuff. But to have some good bartenders in there that kind of know what they're doing, they still are demanding to get all their tips on their drink sales. And they'll still tip out, but with that one exception, everybody else will be sharing equally in the tips.
Yeah, we used to have a challenge with our servers tipping out the bartenders on the service bar a certain percentage, because the service bar is dedicated to making drinks for our
right.
We had some challenges there. Tip shares were always like one of those things that, no matter what you did, it's like not everybody was happy until you just put your foot down and says, okay, this is what we believe is truly fair. But your model takes that to a whole nother level. That's great.
It's really cool. So we're going to be partnering with a bunch of nonprofit organizations in downtown LA. Downtown LA has, for a long time had a very big problem with homelessness.
Yes.
Which has pretty well documented.
Definitely.
And so we're going to be working with social service programs that are local to us, and we'll be holding a job fair, and we will be taking some pre-screened candidates from each one of these organizations. And I hope to fill out the rest of my staff. I have some core guys that obviously are coming down to the new place with me, but we're hoping to fill out our staff with folks that need a job, and that are what I feel are great candidates. People that are eager and very trainable.
You said morale is particularly high, and I think that's tremendous. Is there something or special programs that you do to, to team bond, to get the whole team like on the same page? And obviously we work with people and you don't like everybody, but you have to work together. You have to have mutual respect. There has to be teamwork and all that. But I'm hearing that you're really creating some sort of special chemistry. You know what I mean? And people are just uplifted together. And the end result is a happier guest. I mean, guests are probably inspired by your model when they learn about it, and they're happy to support your restaurant because of what you're doing. But the whole thing just seems to be a rising tide. Is that happening? Are there any particular personality challenges that you have to deal with from time to time? Obviously, it's human nature, but tell us about that.
I think this comes inherently with the idea that everybody does everything. I think that this really does cement that idea of being a team. And we have had great success at the MV Grab and Go. The Grab and Go has been running now for almost 6 years. And, I think one of my greatest, no doubt, has been the retention of staff. People stay with me for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, that's worth its weight in gold.
Oh yeah,
in this industry, and so I just feel like the idea that things are equitable. That everybody is leading by example. Everybody is asked to do the same types of tasks, and everybody is held accountable by one another. I think that really makes people feel good. I think this is the secret sauce. I think that, there has to be equity.
Do you have trainers besides yourself that are getting people up to speed? Because the inclusivity piece and where a lot of these people are coming from have varying levels of experience. Some are more experienced than others, but you recognize something in a person. They've got something special. You want to give them a break, and you bring somebody in, but they need to learn a lot. You obviously have your hand in 1,000 different fires at once, but do you have time, or do you have other people that are helping you bring people on board? And what would that process look like?
Well, what I'm looking for is passion about this industry, for food, for service. And I've conducted thousands of interviews, filling in, the culinary training program over that decade. And I was always looking for, that true passion of food and service, and that combination. And again, you find that a lot of these folks have experience. Maybe they've worked, they worked the kitchen when they were incarcerated, or they've been cooking for their sober living, or they have restaurant experience. A lot of these folks have previous restaurant experience before certain challenges came along in their life. So we are finding that there is some pretty good experience out there, and these folks are super willing and eager for the opportunity. I'm sorry. What was your question?
Well, I really want to. I was asking about the onboarding process, and if you had other people that helped you train these people, because you've got, you're running a business, you're putting out delicious food, you've got to be in 1,000 places at once. Yet, I get the sense that you're a very hands-on leader as well. But obviously, you can't do all this by yourself. So I'm curious if you have other people that are in that role of bringing up the new people that come into your organization.
So again, I think this is like the promoting from within thing. So my senior guys that have been with me for a long time, these are the people that I rely on to train up the new guys.
Nice.
And so that, these are the guys that are making the most money, and these are the guys that have assumed those management roles. So it's really using your core people to train.
Besides training now, is there an evaluation process? Everything in my book, at least when I ran restaurants, really began with a key results or job description for every position. And yours obviously is even more diverse because they have so many responsibilities, and they've got to learn the entire organization. But once somebody understands what their job expectations are, you'd have a regular performance review and let people know how they're doing. But then we also gave people lots of recognition while they were doing their jobs every single day. And we had weekly recognition programs for people who went above and beyond. We had a program called Difference Dollars, and we'd recognize 2 people a week that really either helped a guest, helped a teammate, did something extraordinary above and beyond the normal scope of their job. But, it sounds to me like there has to be some sort of an evaluation every so often just to let people know, hey, this is working out great, or you need a little improvement here. What's that process like for you?
I'm such a hands-on guy, and at this point, I think that we're small enough. My guys see me, every other day, every week. I'm there, I'm around, and so I'm constantly, evaluating and teaching and acknowledging and rewarding. But all of those things are super important. I think those are some challenges as our family gets bigger.
Yeah.
Because we have another restaurant actually that's already under construction that's coming on for 2023. So we could, talk about that next year, but that's already happening. So we are busy expanding. So, I think those are some programs that I'm going to have to dial in as we get larger.
Let's talk about the art room, because I saw some beautiful photographs, and it's almost like an art gallery meets a hospitality space. And it's really upscale and it's really elegant. And I saw beautiful woods and beautiful lighting. And, it is definitely a destination. It's something that blends, 2 important things, the arts and food, right? I think that's a really unique concept, and I haven't seen that so much before. It goes so much beyond just a restaurant displaying artwork on the walls that might be for sale by a local artist. This is literally a curated gallery from what it looked like to me, with really amazing work. Tell us about it.
It is. And that's a big part of my background. My brother is a painter.
Mm-hmm.
A fine artist.
Yeah.
And that kind of like runs through my family. We were both musicians as well. That's another thing that tied in with my concepts. So when I opened the Bar Vista, we were actually nominated for James Beard for restaurant design. And, we had these amazing murals and we did a live music program weekly. So this intertwining of art and food, because I do see, being a chef in an artistic way. I do consider art, cooking and plating and all of that, a very artistic endeavor.
Definitely.
And so I've always been looking for a way to kind of combine all these experiences. And so this is my latest iteration, my latest attempt at this.
Great.
It's in, the art room is this 1915 original construction. It was a factory. Mm-hmm. And it has this amazing brick, and it basically it's 8,000 square feet, and it's 2,500 square feet of restaurant and bar, and then it flows into 2,500 square feet of curated gallery space, and we're also going to be doing private dining, like a tasting menu. Private dining experience in the gallery space itself. The gallery is open to the public and to all of my diners. So it has these huge glass doors that open straight in. You can there's sight lines from all the tables where you can see the art, and you are invited to literally just open the door or walk into the gallery space while you're waiting for your food. To enjoy it while you're dining. The artists are rotating every 6 weeks. It's curated by this amazing outfit called Seasons, which is now Seasons LA. They're out of London, and they are extremely good at what they do. I love the stuff that they curate. They're very good at selling art, which, God bless them, because artists need to sell their work.
Yes.
And so I'm just super excited to be inspired by the by the different artists that will be showing, and to let that influence what I'm doing on my tasting menu for those private dining experiences in the gallery. And so then the other third of the building, the other 3,000 square feet, is the home of Ox Architecture. So it is an architectural office design workspace, conference rooms, reception areas, and just a really, really groovy place that's all about art and design. And it's very, very exciting to see it all come together.
Is it in the arts district, this building? Is it closer to the design centers, the fashion district? Like, where's the neighborhood?
It is South Park. So South Park is very close to what is now crypto.com. No longer the Staples Center, still getting used to that.
Okay. Yep.
So the Crypt. So we're about 2 blocks away from there. And it is a very, very heavily populated area now. So when you have to do your notifications when you're bringing in your liquor license, I think we set some kind of record. We had a 600-foot radius. We had 7,000 residents. So there's all these skyscrapers and new condos, and it's an amazing energy to this little nook in Los Angeles. And again, it's the South Park neighborhood.
Okay, I remember. Now, you talked earlier in the show about maybe going a little big on your opening. Can you elaborate? And what was did you have a marketing plan in place? Did you have a soft opening? Did you just open the doors and people came based on your location, and plenty of people seeing what was going on and new spaces coming in, and then all of a sudden you got that buzz already going? Like, how did the whole marketing thing come together?
Yeah. So, we, that project was about a 2-year build out, ramp up. So I was raising money, and I was just tinkering on the concept and the design of the place, all of that, and we did a ton of PR. I already had I had a good level of notoriety at that point. I had been working for some pretty big name celebrities, some A-listers, and I had gone on Food Network and won Chopped.
Oh, excellent! And I wasn't aware of that. So, awesome.
Yeah, so that was a big story back then in like 2015. It was like chef from Venice goes to New York, wins Chopped. Little do they know that he lived his life as an episode of Chopped. Because I ran the Bread and Roses Cafe.
Yep.
And we were basically making gourmet food based on donations. So you never really kind of knew the menu changed based on what we had. And I was in the Los Angeles Times and the Chicago Tribune and whatnot. And so I had a good bit of notoriety. I was also part of a band at that time. I'd mentioned that I'm a musician, and we were doing a lot of benefit shows, raising money for homeless outreach. And so we had some good mojo, and we just of snowballed that. We rolled that into the opening, and there was a lot of anticipation. We had taken a pretty iconic space that had housed a billiard hall and like a rock and roll concert venue, and so it was a very iconic space that we were like completely transforming, and there was a ton of anticipation. And like I said, we opened huge.
Wow, that is awesome! What a great story.
And in retrospect, I think we should have taken it a little slower and gotten better. And we should have practiced more. We could have used some more soft openings. So looking back, I might have segmented the dining room. I might have opened just a portion of it. I may have done more soft openings, and I may have, like I said, just gotten better at what we were attempting to do before we were booked every single night for a year straight.
Well, there was no looking back at that point. It was only what's ahead,
Yeah.
right? And it sounds like you're still just looking forward. You don't look back because it's all part of our journey. Life's a journey,
We
not a
learned
destination.
we learned a ton of lessons. I mean, in this business,
Yeah.
you just don't know until you know. Yeah, certain things.
Well, it sounds like you're really happy doing what you're doing, but what's next for Chef D? You got any big plans beyond what you're doing now?
I do. I can't talk about this much, but
Okay, that's fair.
I've signed a production deal for a TV show.
Excellent.
Yeah, and it's with I signed a deal with All Three Media, who's responsible for most of Gordon Ramsay's shows. This will be a departure.
Excellent.
So it won't be a competition show or anything like that. It's going to be like a premium docu-series, and it's really going to be about what we just talked about. It's going to be about people, their stories, their challenges, and how they're a good fit for this industry, and how maybe this industry can change a little bit and come a little bit closer to them, and how they can do the same and come a little bit closer to the industry. It's two entities that I think need each other now, maybe more than ever, in this post-pandemic reality.
Fantastic. Wow, this is tremendous. Well, it's certainly been our pleasure having you on the Restaurant Rockstars podcast, Chef D. What would your advice be to operators moving forward? Obviously, the pandemic has decimated the industry. Those that are still standing are really shell-shocked, beaten up, and it's not over yet. And there's been lots of government relief, which has helped, but it's not been enough. And it's like people are just hanging by a thread. And it's our goal, obviously, to re-inspire people, to rediscover the passion that they had for this business. But what would you say to operators and managers and people in this business moving forward that are still part of our industry? Because it's such a proud, passionate industry.
I think that you have to invest in your people. I think that our staff, our crew, that it's the lifeblood of everything that we do. And I think that when we start to think about people and their lives, and how they feel every day when they show up for work and how they feel when they go home, I think that creating this nurturing, respectful environment that increases willingness in folks, because I just don't think that you can teach willingness. I think that this is something that you have to cultivate, and you have to lead by example, and you have to invest, and you have to put a priority on people's lives and that work-life balance. I think that's really the key moving forward. I think that that's what's going to allow this industry as a whole to get rid of some of the old negative stereotypes about it, and be thought of once again as a career, and not just a job, not just a place where we stop in, but a place where we can spend our entire careers, and we can have this really happy and fulfilling life.
Well, I think you're doing a tremendous service to the industry and to those people that are in need of a second shot, and just elevating the business as a whole. I think that's tremendous. So thanks so much for being a guest on the podcast.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
And thanks to our audience for tuning in. Again, that was the Restaurant Rockstars podcast. We'll see you all in the next episode. Stay tuned.
Thank you, Chef D, for an amazing interview. You're a great guest, and I'm, again, so pleased that you're sharing your philosophies with our audience. It's a wonderful thing you're doing, giving people a second chance, up-leveling our industry, and, turning jobs into career opportunities for the future. It's a beautiful business, ours. It's based on passion. It's based on pride, and giving these people these chances to learn and to move up in your organization is a wonderful thing. So thanks for what you're doing. Thanks also to our sponsors of this week's podcast and the Restaurant Rockstars Academy. So why not leave us a question also? I love this feature. It's really fun. Just go to our show notes for this episode. About halfway down, you can see a button that says Ask Us Anything. You can actually record a message to me. Any challenges, any questions you have about running your restaurant operations, whatnot, I'd love to respond back to you. Stay well, everyone. We'll see you next time.
People go to restaurants for lots of reasons. What the customer doesn't know is the thousands of details it takes to run a great restaurant. This is a high-risk, high-fail business. It's a treacherous road, and smart operators need a professional guide. I'm Roger. I've started many highly successful, high-profit restaurants. I'm passionate about helping other owners and managers not just succeed, but knock it out of the park. You don't just want to run a restaurant. You want to dominate your competition and create a lasting legacy. Join the Academy, and I'll show you how it's done.
Thanks for listening to the Restaurant Rockstars Podcast. For lots of great resources, head over to restaurantrockstars.com. See you next time.